Can we have a copy of your itinerary on a regular basis about the work you do, how many hours you spend, where you're doing your work? Because
certainly not.
Why not?
Because I think it's a thoroughly impertinent question.
But so you don't think licence fee payers are entitled to know how much specific time you're spending working on their behalf?
I think you're entitled to know how much time I'm spending. I think you're entitled to put down freedom of information requests for how many days I spend in the office or how many days I spend doing other things. But if you think I'm going to do a diary for you in order to satisfy some populist pursuit of somebody you didn't want to run an organisation which you don't want to exist, you're kidding yourself.
Well,
I mean, what is the role of it? Do you want to know my toilet habits? What else do you want to know?
Well, Lord Patten, if you can I know it's difficult for you to refrain from being patronising. I think you described yourself as smug and complacent earlier. I wouldn't have disagreed with that description either.
I didn't.
But if you can just refrain from that for a few moments and actually answer the questions that are put to you. It's a perfectly reasonable point. You've got, I don't know how many extra other jobs you've got. You've declared 10 on your declaration of interest. The Guardian claims you've got 13. So I'm not entirely sure if you'd like to clarify exactly how many other jobs. Is it 10 or is it 30? Are you a member of the International Board of Overseers for Istanbul's Sabancı University? Is that a job? Did the Guardian make that up, did they?
No. If you look at the latest declaration...
I've got the latest here. It's here. There's 10 here. There's 10 jobs here that you do. Okay. So it's perfectly reasonable, given that you've been presiding over a shambles at the BBC over the last few months. I think it's perfectly reasonable. You might be indifferent to anybody asking you any questions about your role.
I'm not.
It's perfectly reasonable to say, have you been actually putting in the hours, putting in the yards that you should have done as the chairman of the BBC Trust? You might think that's a ridiculous question. Actually, many people are asking that question. So it's perfectly fair to say, if you've been spending all of this time, you said at the time when you came before us at the time that you saw big jobs as 7-day-a-week jobs, how much time are you actually spending? Now, how much time, if you can list us all these other jobs you've got, tell us how much time you spend on all the other jobs so we can make an assessment as to whether or not you're putting in enough time at the BBC.
All right, jobs for which I'm remunerated involve 12 meetings a year, and even if it involves travel to some of them and reading papers, I would guess that's less than 20 days a year. In addition to that, I'm chairman of the British Council's annual UK-Italy conference, which takes place over a weekend and has one day preparatory in January every year. I was asked by the government to chair the UK-India Round Table, which meets at a weekend and has one day preparatory to that. I'm a member of the Tablet Trust, which meets on an evening in June or July, and I'm afraid there's occasionally a dinner afterwards. And I'm Chancellor of Oxford University, a post which was held by Harold Macmillan when he was Prime Minister, by Roy Jenkins when he was leader of his party in the House of Lords, and that does involve quite a lot of ceremonial duties principally in June and September, and other times of the year there are other responsibilities as well.
You see, you've given the impression to me today that you didn't really know about what was going on. You didn't even think it was your job to know what was going on. All the jobs where everything's gone wrong was the Director General's, nothing to do with you. When something was your responsibility, you've handed it over to some other inquiry. It seems to me you've been treating this like some kind of sinecure post, a grand title, which I'm sure would have appealed to you, a grand title as chairman of the trust, which doesn't really involve a great deal of work. Fortunately for you, the government have just created another sinecure post you might want to consider yourself for. It's called the Grocery Code Adjudicator. You might want to move across to that one instead. But it gives the impression that you didn't really want to put in the hard work that you thought this was something that you could get paid a decent amount of money and actually not do a lot of work for. And nothing that you've said today has actually changed my perspective on that.
That doesn't surprise me.
What do you say to that?
I don't have anything else to add.
So you don't recognise that description at all?
No, I don't.
So in terms of do you think that the people's trust in the BBC is a key role of the chairman of the trust?
It's very important, and I'm delighted that trust in the BBC, despite recent events, is greater than trust in any other news organisation.
But how's the trust in the BBC gone since you took over as chairman of the trust?
It's fallen because of the recent problems.
And do you not believe you should take responsibility for that?
I think I should share the responsibility for rebuilding that trust.
You've spent a fortune recruiting somebody who was actually already under your nose, but you didn't mind spending a fortune to recruit that person. Then you've spent a fortune paying him off. He was your choice. Are you not taking responsibility for that decision?
You know what? I'm not sure that this Socratic dialogue with you is getting us very far.